Now, admittedly, it's hard to know where to begin here. There's so many stories we can talk about, so many different things we could focus on. But there are two stories that I wanna highlight that I think they may seem unrelated, but they do say something about the core of MAGA's appeal to people. Not all MAGA. I'm going to keep saying that. I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but it does say something about the core of the MAGA base, of the MAGA movement, right? Um, Now, Trump, to his credit, he put together a very diverse set of interest this past election cycle. Folks from different walks of life who have different core interest, different belief systems, they all came together under the banner of MAGA. Okay? And in some ways, the two stories that I'm going to focus on speak to that diverse set of interest. Okay? These two stories together, though, again, they do tell us something about the core of MAGA. So, just so you know, the two stories I'm going to talk about, and again, they seem like they're not related. Story one is the controversy over H-1B visas. This is all in the news a few weeks back. It's died down some, but it will be back. Story number two is the ongoing wildfires and the discourse around that, specifically the so-called focus on DEI, the idea that unqualified people are to blame for the tragedy in California right now. Uh, these two stories, again, they on their face don't seem connected, but I promise you they are. And let me make that connection clear to you. Now, on the first story, on the story of H-1B visas, uh, Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, others in what I call tech MAGA, they like these visas. They want more of these visas. In fact, historically, you know, uh, programs like H-1B visas, this kind of immigration has been our secret sauce. America, due to our country, our culture, our values, our opportunities, has been a magnet to the best and the brightest of the world. We can attract talent from all over the globe to come here, work here, start businesses here, live here, and benefit us in America, benefit our country. This is increasingly important as a second superpower has emerged in China. And we want to, win the military, economic, and technological race against them. So Elon Musk said that he wants more H-1B visas, like double the number at least. And he caught some flack for that. And then Vivek Ramaswamy came to his defense. Came to his defense, not just his defense, but defense of the visa program, why it's important, why we need it. But OG MAGA, MAGA Classic, had a different take. They see things quite differently. Okay? So they came for Elon. They came for him pretty harshly. They are against expanding the H-1B visa program. They are against bringing in, high skilled labor from India and other Asian countries. And they've been pretty vocal about it, oftentimes pretty racially racist about it, right? So Vivek, he wanted to fire back, defend Elon, defend the visa program, explain to the folks criticizing him and others why this program is important. So here's what he did. He fired off a tweet, a long tweet, a diatribe, if you will, defending the program. Now, I'll get to what he said. I'll cover all this momentarily, but I want to contextualize it. I want to contextualize it. And in order to do so, we need to hop into the Wayback Machine to 1959. Stick with me now. Stick with me. 1959 with a man named Oscar Lewis, an anthropologist who did a study, and a theory was born. A theory to understand inequality was born called the culture of poverty. The culture of poverty. This was it was new, it was fresh, it was different than that old school biology versus environment, nature versus nurture debate. in terms of understanding inequality. And Lewis focused on culture. He focused on Mexican families, Puerto Rican families. It was then expanded to black families, to poor white families. And pretty much what it argued was that society, for certain groups of people, society is not what keeps them impoverished generation after generation. Maybe society played a role, maybe discrimination played a role at some point in the past, but in the present, it's not society's fault. It's not your genetics, it's not unfairness, it's your culture. It's your culture, your values and your norms. Your values and your norms keep you impoverished. And because for many of us, we learn culture from our parents first, we will pass these deficient, even dysfunctional values and norms onto our kids. Right? So poverty will perpetuate itself without any help from bigots, without any help from society. Your culture will keep you impoverished. So uh, this theory, it took off like wildfire. It had its critics, it had its supporters, and it was quickly utilized almost exclusively on poor African Americans, especially as the 50s turned to the 60s and during and after the civil rights movement. So let's get to 1965. Right? This is the year that the Moynihan report came out. The official name was the Negro Family, the Case for National Action. The Negro Family, the Case for National Action. It's just referred to now as the Moynihan Report. It was authored by then Secretary of Labor. He would go on to become a senator, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a Democrat. He worked for LBJ, and he wanted to study the black family to see why, compared to white families, they were doing so poorly in terms of income, in terms of wealth, etc. The the crux of it was the black family had broken down. Right? He didn't solely blame the breakdown of black families on black people themselves. He talked about the history of slavery and segregation and discrimination. But by 1965, we were passing these laws, things were getting better, then you couldn't blame slavery anymore. You couldn't blame Jim Crow even anymore. Too many black kids are being born into single parent homes. Too many homes don't have fathers. Too much reliance on welfare use, etc. And this had the effect of keeping black people impoverished relative to their white peers. It was an extension of the culture of poverty. Okay? They're not exactly the same, but their logic focuses on people themselves. Okay? Now, again, both Lewis and Moynihan were more nuanced about their language and how they talked about inequality in people and culture. But the big takeaway from many Americans, many politicians, many academics was, hey, fix your culture. You want equality? You want better for your children, for yourselves, for your grandchildren? You want better educational outcomes? You want better employment outcomes? Fix your culture. Again, that's not exactly what Lewis and Moynihan had in mind, but that was the big takeaway for a lot of people. The huge takeaway for a lot of people was that your culture is deficient. Your culture is dysfunctional. Your culture is the problem, not society, not the government, not discrimination. It is your norms, your values, your habits. Fix them and then see where you end up. Right? Let's fast forward some more. 1980s, the Reagan Revolution. Right? Reagan is known for a lot of things. He's famous or infamous, depends on your perspective, for many things. But one of my first introductions to Reagan was his invocation of the welfare queen. Right? The welfare queen. There's a lot has been written about this. I'm sure there's plenty things you can find online. YouTube the welfare queen and see what pops up. Right? But essentially, he was admonishing people for living off welfare while hardworking Americans were struggling. Okay? There are so many people in a government dole, just buying steaks and Cadillacs off welfare, whereas the guy with two jobs, the guy whose kids are struggling, who's working hard, is barely getting by. And of course, this is the 1980s. It was very, very racialized, very, very racialized. Right, the welfare queen came to be seen as a black woman, and not just by Reagan and other whites, other conservative whites, by many black people too. I mean, there were a lot of people before Reagan, white, black, everything else, Republican, Democrat, academic, non-academic, reporter, who invoked culture in a very similar way. But anyways, Reagan used it to great success, and he had two terms, and then his VP won after he was done. So that's a 12-year span. And the first Democrat to break through to get back in the White House was Bill Clinton, and he got back by promising to crack down on crime, to roll back welfare laws. In fact, he passed both the crime bill and a welfare reform bill that were pretty much getting at the same issue. Excuse me. The idea that by this point we're decades, past "We Shall Overcome." We're decades past the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act and the Fair Housing Act. Right? At this point, we've done our job as society, as institutions, as a country. Now it's up to you. So in the spirit of Lewis and Moynihan and Reagan and all those black conservatives, right? Fix your culture. We're gonna take these provisions away. You don't need these welfare handouts anymore, because racial discrimination is a thing of the past. Fix your culture, right? Let's fast forward some more. We're getting closer and closer to our modern moment. Enter one Barack Obama. Barack Obama. He hit the scene at the 2004 Democratic National Convention. Many folks didn't even know who he was, and he gave the keynote address and just tore the house down. Right, tore the house down. He gave a very, very passionate speech. He touched on a number of things. For many folks watching that convention, there was their introduction to this man, and he had just the verbal flexibility, the discourse, the language, the passion that can really get you sucked into politics. In fact, former MSNBC host Chris Matthews at that convention in 2004 said, "I think I just saw the first black president." He called it. He called it, right? Just that's how good that speech was, how well it was received. And yeah, it talked about culture. It was a small line. It was not that, again, he didn't go hard on black folks, but I'll read you what he said, and then we'll listen. So because I want you to hear the applause it got in the convention hall, right? So he said, "Go into any inner city neighborhood, and folks will tell you that government alone can't teach kids to learn. They know that parents have to parent, that children can't achieve unless we raise their expectations and turn off the television sets and eradicate the slander that says a black youth with the book is acting white." End quote. Again, not that big of a deal, right? It's at the time, some folks noticed, most folks didn't. The folks in the hall gave that line in particular a rousing applause. Take a listen.
They don't want their tax money wasted by a welfare agency or by the Pentagon. Go into any inner city neighborhood, and folks will tell you that government alone can't teach our kids to learn. They know that parents have to teach, that children can't achieve unless we raise their expectations and turn off the television sets and eradicate the slander that says a black youth with a book is acting white. They know those things.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that applause? That was genuine. It was not made for TV. It was not fabricated. They really had enthusiasm for that man and that line. He gets it. And if you know the story of Barack Obama, like he used that speech to springboard himself into the nomination. 4 years later, became president, a two-term president, and as president, he would admonish black folks often for, cultural practices. He would talk about racism and discrimination and how we have a ways to go, but he was also, not let us off the hook. Like, hey, what can you be doing better? Like, what can we as a people do better ourselves to improve our lives, right? We can, take school more seriously. We can wait until we're married to have kids. We can, you know, turn the TV off and pick up a book, pull our pants up, etc. He did this often. He invoked culture. Now, that gets us back to today, or not today, but this current moment with Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm gonna call him Vivi. I just like that name. So, henceforth, he's Vivi. Um, Again, Vivi, in trying to just to remind you, trying to justify the use of H-1B visas, why they're important, why we need them, why tech companies prefer them to native born Americans. Guess what he did? Guess what he invoked? That's right, you guessed it. The man invoked culture. And here's what he said. The reason top tech companies often hire foreign born and first generation engineers over Native Americans isn't because of an innate American IQ deficit, a lazy and wrong explanation. A key part of it comes down to the C word, culture. Tough questions demand tough answers. And if we're really serious about fixing the problem, we have to confront the truth. He continued, our American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence for way too long, at least since the 1990s and likely longer. That doesn't start in college, it starts young. A culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. A culture that venerates Corey from Boy Meets World or Zach and Slater from or over Screech and Saved by the Bell or Stefan over Stephen Arkell in Family Matters will not produce the best engineers. I'm gonna stop there. You get the point, right? You get the point. He's pointing the finger not at society, not at schools, not at politics. He's pointing the finger at Americans, right? Fix your culture. Fix your culture. My boy Corey caught a stray. What the hell you got? What's your beef with Corey from Boy Meets World? Also, Vivi, I'm pretty sure I'm a Saved by the Bell aficionado. I'm pretty sure Zach got higher test scores than Screech. Go look it up. Like Zach got into Yale, Screech did not. Just so you know. But anyways, right? Uh, yeah, he went there. He went there, and he said a lot more. It was way longer than that, but you get the point. You get the point. It was not flattering. It was what he thought was a hard truth. Back when Lewis and Moynihan and Reagan and Clinton, even Obama, would talk to black folks that way. You were telling the hard truth. Folks might not like it. Folks who are too sensitive or too PC might not like it, but the truth is the truth, and someone needs to speak the truth. Well, Vivi, he put truth in all caps. He was from his perspective speaking the truth. Now here's where he went wrong. Vivi's talking to white folks. Right? He's talking to white folks. First of all, he's talking about the tech sector. Not very many black folks in the tech sector. Right? When it comes to the native-born population, right, it's mostly white and Asian American. Right? Well, he contrasted Asian Americans, immigrants even. So he's talking to white folks. He's talking to MAGA, specifically those folks who are mad at Elon. Remember, this does not happen in the vacuum. Right? People were attacking Elon for saying he wanted more of these visa recipients. Right? And in defending him, Vivek talked about culture. Now, here's the problem, Vivi. That theory, that perspective was never meant for white folks. Maybe poor white folks. Right? Maybe a subset, but not in general. No, no, you can't tell white America to fix its culture. Are you crazy? Especially being as brown as you are, right? There's just no way you could do that, right? The backlash to that tweet was immense. Right? It got viewed tens of millions of times, right? Tens of thousands of comments, mostly negative, directed at Vivek Ramaswamy, telling white folks to fix their culture. Right? Turn the TV off. Right? Stop watching Boy Meets World. Stop watching Saved by the Bell. Right? Stop caring about the prom queen. Care more about math and science. Right? All you had to do, Vivi, all you had to do was include the word black. That's it. If you would have said the reason so many black Americans aren't in tech, or the reason we prefer these folks over black folks, the same folks who are criticizing you would be cheering you. They would be celebrating you. Right? There's a long history. I covered it briefly of folks using this idea, this culture of poverty, ideology to explain black people deficiencies. And these folks have used it to great success in the academy, in politics, in business, right? You, my friend, you made the mistake in thinking that you could apply that to white America, that you can tell them to fix their values and their norms, right? He also said stop watching Friends, right? Are you serious, guy? Really? And he caught massive blowback. He backed down. He tried to clarify, but it was too late. It was too late. There are some people who are on his head now, right? That they want nothing to do with him now. Furthermore, furthermore, many of these folks they responded in very racist ways. There were some good faith critiques of him. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Ann Coulter, she had a tweet where she talked about a legit critique of this program. I mentioned it earlier how they're like indentured servants. They can't really navigate the labor market with any kind of freedom, right? Uh, but there was a lot more racism directed at Indian Americans, at Indian immigrants, right? And Vivek had to learn the hard way that his inclusion in MAGA is conditional. You you shut up, you toe the party line, or you shut up. That's it. Right? Now, here's the last point I want to make because I want to keep this video at a decent time limit. This was not just clarifying on how far or just whom you can whose culture you can critique, right? But it was also a mask off moment for MAGA. Mask off moment for MAGA, right? Something you heard often in response to Vivi was that America first means Americans first. America first means Americans first, right? It sounds reasonable. The idea that, hey, we can just teach Americans here, right, to do those jobs. Okay, cool. I'll address that in the next video, right? But the bigger point for now is that a big part of Trump's appeal, of MAGA's appeal, is the idea that we're going to get control of the border. We're going to get control of immigration, right? And for Vivek, tech MAGA, immigration controversies, debates, problems is the border. The border or the massive undocumented population that we have here. These are all worthy issues to care about, to want to do something about, right? But Vivi thought if he spoke the language of being tough at the border, of mass deportations, of cracking down on crime or fentanyl or migrant crime, that he was in the clear. Right? In fact, a common refrain from MAGA world was, "We're not against immigration. We're against illegal immigration." You heard this often. You've heard this since 2015. For almost 10 years now, we've heard this. You can't call me a bigot or a xenophobe or a nativist. I just want people to come here legally, like my parents did or my grandparents did, right? Well, mask off moment, MAGA. because H-1B recipients come here legally. The H-1B visa program is a legal program. It's an American policy. If you didn't care about immigration per se, you just wanted to get tough on the border and make the process legal and orderly, what's your beef? What's the problem? Right? You can critique it for what it means for wages, what it means for workers. Those are fair critiques, right? But most people who went for Vivi's head were not talking about that. And Culture did, to her credit. They were talking about American identity, American culture. We don't want more people like that. They started just really being racist, not just towards Indian immigrants, Indian Americans, but towards India. Right? We don't want your people here, period. Right? This notion that MAGA's beef with immigration is just illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants, that's a fiction. That's a fiction. Right? This whole episode, it told us about culture. It told us about whose culture is liable or a fair game for critique and whose isn't. But it also told us that for a sizable chunk of the MAGA base, MAGA classic, right, no more immigrants. Period. No more immigrants. Period. Because the real reason is racial demographics. Right? But that's a different video for a different time. I'm going to stop here. Again, this is video 1 in a 3-part introduction to me and my channel. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, comment, let me know what you think, and tune in for part 2 because I'm not done yet. Deuces.